Now we come to the city as a common. And in this part of my contribution, I will give you some examples from Europe and the world regions on common projects that could be of interest for you. So first of all, I found from Vandana Shiva this sentence that she is made in one of the international conferences. Nature is intelligence, diversity, and self-organization. Municipalism is self-organization at the level of cities. So this then just one short sentence on the development of cities. Today, about 50% of the world population is living in cities, and the number is still growing. It's expected that in 2050, about 2/3 of us will live in cities. So cities are one of the very urgent topics we have to concentrate on. And then just to remind you that urban commons are twofold. One side is that they are bottom-up emergence by citizens and commoners, and second, as a radical municipal administrative configuration, and that we find in all examples of urban cities that there are municipal administrative initiatives and bottom-up emergence by citizens. So the realization of the urban common agenda hinges upon our capacity in all aspects of urban life, such as, it's only a sample, access to basic infrastructure and resource management as water, energy, and waste, open public spaces, affordable housing, public transport, education and health, urban agricultural activities. I forgot culture, which is a very important point, and participative democratic governance of urban resources and institutions. So let's have a look. Let's have a look on examples in Europe and in the world regions. Starting with Europe, a number of initiatives are currently underway, started variously by specific groups or citizens or municipalities working on participatory democracy. These include projects such as decentralized use of regenerative energy sources, social housing, digital democracy, urban gardening, open spaces for culture and art, among others. My first example is about Naples in southern Italy. There, the mayor, De Magistris, responded to the demands of the Italian social movement that it calls itself Bene Comune. It was developed during the period when the referendum on water was prepared, and they are widespread all over, with smaller projects all over Italy. And he took it in his hands for his city, in the city of Naples, to create a department for commons in his municipality. So there is, in the administration, is included a department for commons. Further, the city council changed the municipal statute by inserting commons as one of the interests to be protected and recognized as a fundamental right. That's so you see, it's going far, not only as activity from the administration, but also by basing it on more general aspects. Backed by these municipal policies, movement activists occupied more than 20 abandoned buildings for social, political, and cultural use. So the activity and the engagement of the administration and the mayor led to the spread out the activists to create under these umbrella activities that are changing the city. Yeah? And this is my first, it's an ongoing process. And it's, let me say, in European cities, you have, sometimes you have in the inner parts of the cities, you have abandoned parts of districts where it's forced that speculation can come in to rebuild on a luxury level houses and things. And so this is something of resistance that they are backed by their administration. It's forbidden by law. It's very clear in Italy too. The right of individual property is in the first line, but they try to do it as nevertheless, and it's backed by the local administrations. That is something where you see the administration and the activists are together in resistance to existing structures and conditions. Now, the second European example I want to bring to you is the city of Barcelona, which is in Spain, you know, and at the Mediterranean Sea, Naples too, Mediterranean Sea, at the Mediterranean Sea. And in Barcelona, a participatory citizens platform, it's called Barcelona in Comú, Barcelona in Common, has started work on decentralized and democratic controlled use of renewable energy sources at the municipal level. The platform was mobilized when Ada Colau, an activist with the movement Ocupas, became the mayor of the city in 2015. Just to make a brief remark on Ocupas, it's about occupying abandoned houses and giving them to families who lost their homes during the European crisis. Its activists also try to save the old popular boroughs at the seaside from being taken over by international investors. By the way, these activities are not allowed by law, but they try to Ada Colau and the administration in Barcelona too try to hold on these practices, even if it's not allowed by law. And up to now, there is the national or regional authorities are not intervening. And we have to just as an information, during Spain as a whole was suffering strongly under the financial European crisis, and many people had bought their houses with credits from the banks, had to give them up. They lost their homes, and there were a lot of families without homes in this crisis, and so Ocupas was founded in Barcelona, but it's the same initiatives exist in other cities of Spain too. It's not well seen by the national and regional authorities, but it's on the local levels. It's an ongoing process. So what Barcelona did more, and one of the first international activities undertaken by Ada's administration was the signing of a proclamation on open and refugee-friendly cities against the inhumanity of European Union and its member states, Together with Mytilene, this is a city on the Isle of Lesbos in Greece, and Lampedusa, it's the one of the small islands in the south of Sicily, where traditionally many refugees come in from the African side. And this is very important because more cities in Europe now are sharing this proclamation. And it's important because they resist to the national and the European law and the politics in this sense. In 2017, Barcelona invited to Fearless Cities. It was a big conference, an international conference with participants from 180 cities of the world. They raised the slogan, "Democracy was born in cities, and here we'll win it back." So perhaps this is a pure European thing or Western thing, because it's true that democracy was developed, if you remember the Greek ancestors and so on, and even in the Middle Ages and in later, democracy always was in cities located, if there was democracy, kind of before it came to national levels by the French Revolution and so on and so on and so on. But perhaps this is different here because it was okay, but so it's a slogan that is now outspoken all over Europe and other countries. Democracy was born in cities, and here we'll win it back. And resolved to create the global networks of solidarity and hope in the face of hate, walls, and borders. So this is an ongoing process, and we hope that the resistance of cities against nationalist and racist and austerity and neoliberal policies will go on. They need, they are not so secure as we might think, because, by example, the new right-wing Italian government already signed a kind of a decree that all occupied compounds and houses and land should be given back to the state and to private. So it's an ongoing struggle. It's not an easy thing. Let me come to one example from Germany, where that is not on the administration level. In Germany, we have since the 60s, a long tradition of self-organized solidarity economy. It's very small parts of economy, but it's as well in rural areas as in cities, and they created a kind of structures inside their companies and cooperative structures that everybody should participate as far he and she are able and as far she or he needs it. So it's not this kind of formalized from 9 to 5 rhythm, but it's more what you call the more flexible way to but it's structured, is not only flexibilized. So what in Germany arrived during the period when the neoliberalization and the privatization of public services and goods, and especially of public housing in Germany in the cities run up enormously in the 90s, was the so-called Mietshäuser-Syndikat, Mietshäuser, rented houses syndicate. So this is a very it's a small, but they are like, let's say, some kind that gives inspiration for others too. It's a network to support self-organized co-housing projects, ensuring that all inhabitants co-own the real estate assets of these co-housing projects. They collect money, and they buy houses, and they share it with the inhabitants of the houses. And since 1983, the network has grown to consist of 111 co-housing projects with about 3,000 residents. 21 initiatives throughout the country are in the process of joining the network. So this is very small if you look to the numbers, but it's as an inspiring element that you do not depend completely on the capitalist real estate. It's an inspiring element. Now I have 3 or 4 examples from other world regions, and I want to show it to you. Now I have a lot of text because it's following a lot of text, and I hope you can. The first is from Brazil, a rather small city in Brazil, the Conjunto Palmira. It is a rural town of 30,000 people in northeastern Brazil, which has traditionally suffered from high unemployment. Also, the town did have small-scale manufacturing. The products were sold in nearby cities, and much of the value was lost to the middlemen. Communal activity in the town developed as a result of demonstrations against the poor state of infrastructure. The town had no facilities for sanitation, clean water, electricity, or other public services. From the early 1980s, an association of inhabitants of Palmira neighborhood was established, and in turn, this group set up the Banco Palmas, which issues its own currency without being backed by the national currency. There are currently around 30,000 palm is the name of this currency in circulation. It's more than $15,000. The bank has 6 paid employees who receive 20% of their salary in palmas. Banco Palm makes small loans to local people which only circulate within the neighborhood. With these loans, local people are able to create small businesses, thereby generating an income and enabling them to pay the loans back. The creation of currency has enabled the strengthening of the local economy and the creation of more than 1,000 jobs. This too is a rather small example, but it shows that you can develop even in a rather difficult environment. You can create a kind of circulation and cooperation structures where the city can in a way develop. Now we come to an example that is one of the big cities in Southeast Asia, Seoul, with 10 million inhabitants, just not as big as Hyderabad or others in India, but 10 million inhabitants, represents one of the most promising examples in Southeast Asia of a municipality that is promoting democratic participation. In 2012, the Seoul Metropolitan Government launched the Sharing City Seoul program and also enacted the Seoul Metropolitan Government Ordinance on the promotion of sharing, which provides a legal foundation for this initiative. Small and medium enterprises found fund and to use a public facility at a reduced fee where necessary to serve the public interest. The purpose of the ordinance is to maximize utilization of resources, recover communities, and revitalize the regional economy through emphasis on sharing. It defines sharing as activities that create social, economic, and environmental values by jointly using resources such as space, goods, information, talent, and experience. The ordinance designates official sharing enterprises that address urban challenges and meet economic or environmental criteria. Specifically, the mayor of Seoul may designate an organization that intends to be a sharing organization or sharing enterprise. And the mayor also has the right to provide funds for these sharing enterprises and organizations. So this is a municipal administrative example. And now I would like to show you one example. I'm not really happy with it because it's using Twitter and it's a private-public partnership, but in this case it is useful for the people. So I put it into my examples. In Jakarta, on disaster response management through crowdsourced civic data. This is called PETA Jakarta. Jakarta is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. Every year it gets flooded during monsoons, since 40% of its city is at or below sea level, a problem that is going to intensify with the expected rise in global sea levels due to climate change. Interestingly, Jakarta has one of the highest concentrations of active Twitter users in the world and an overall high use of mobiles. Given this context, a public-private partnership, I'm not happy with that, but that's it, a partnership between Twitter, Jakarta Emergency Management and Emergency Management Agency, the University of Wollongong in Australia and others led to develop the Konyi City, an open-source intelligence framework that manages spatial data received from mobile messaging apps. This is the first platform built on the Konyi City was PETA Jakarta, a Twitter-based crowdsourcing map for flood data. It relies on Twitter to organize and display real-time information about flooding to the city's residents. It allows users to geotag tweets to indicate hazardous flooded areas, which are added to the map of government flood alerts that anyone can use. I think this is an example where it really is useful to use the digital opportunities for the existential information and in-time information of the population. And that's why I put it on. Now, my last example I wanted to give, to show to you is we are going to the Philippines. Social housing programs for the urban poor and informal settlers are being designed and implemented by a consortium of organizations. The housing backlog in the country is currently up to 5 million. Almost 1.2 million of the urban poor live in precarious and untenanted housing in informal settlements, of which 104,000 live in Metro Manila's danger zones, which includes the easement of waterways and right-of-way of power transmission lines. Another large group of 107,000 families live within the easement of the South Railway system from Manila to Bicol. Yet others live on large estates of government-owned and controlled corporations or on private lands without legal tenure. So this is the situation that they found, and now there is the proposal how to solve this situation in a way. So there is Kilos Maralita, is a network of community associations comprising informal settlers' families. So it's not a traditional NGO, but it's already the participatory structure that the people concerned are participating in the network. Other members of KM are federations of urban poor people's organizations. Currently, KM, Kilos Maralita, focuses on assisting informal settlers associations prepare comprehensive social housing project proposals, also called people's proposals, and negotiates for finance with government agencies, particularly the Social Housing Finance Corporation. In recent years, KM also initiated the KM Federation of Housing and Community Service Cooperatives to undertake business undertakings to support resettled communities. Two NGOs, the Institute for Popular Democracy of the Philippines and the Institute for Philippine Cooperatives and Social Enterprise Development, provide KM and the KM Federation and their affiliated community associations with various forms of organizational and business development assistance. Together, these bodies, KM Federation, and Philippine Cooperatives, and the Institute for Popular Democracy, and others, constitute a consortium for informal settlers' families. So this is the structure they created, and you can imagine it's not done in one day. So it took a lot of time to bring all these different organizations together. Personally, I have worked with the Institute for Popular Democracy in Philippines. It's a very interesting institution. Developing always the participatory democracy, democratic projects, and so to date, 13 housing projects proposed by KM affiliates have received final approval for funding by the authorities, with a total cost of over 4.4 billion, covering a total of 10,400 families. The average project cost per family housing unit is P410,000. P is the national currency. I don't know how much it is in rupees. Anybody has an idea? No. Okay. So we have to look for it. Selling it to 450,000 per family housing unit. Of these, at least 8 projects are already under construction. So I think this is a very interesting example, and it takes time to settle it. It takes time to develop such a project, because it's not a small project. It's a project that asks a lot of different activities and actors and activists, and the inclusion of some relevant institutions to realize it. But looking to the situation of informal settlers in big cities that live without infrastructure and partly without clean water and so on, I think this is something you should look at. Perhaps you have the opportunity to take contact with them if you are try to develop housing projects in your cities, because I think they are good partners to with their experience to give some advice how to proceed. So these are my examples, and just to come to a kind of conclusion, the cases discussed above exemplify the diversity of practices on urban commons, initiated variously by citizens, but the really important role of municipalities, local administrators, and even traditional NGOs to bring forward the ideas are not to underestimate. Many of the projects I know start as acts of disobedience against commodification of space, resource, and basic services. But every such project is the beginning of a process to implement the right to the city. So it's important, I think, if we look to the European examples, to resist against and to struggle, even if it's really an act of disobedience, to act as you want. And I think it's important to look at the municipalities. What are their competences? What are their interests? What are their financial sources? And is it possible, if they are very conservative, to bring new structures, new people with new ideas in, who are open to develop in a cooperative and common sense the cities? Because if not, I think the picture of the neoliberal cities that are in the means that only the upper classes and the upper middle classes perhaps have access to the infrastructure, to housing, to all the things they need, and the poorer and let's say ordinary people have to live in suburbs, or even are expulsed from the city areas. That's not, I think, what is a perspective that we should share. Thank you.